Hi, I'm Henry Thomas. I'm an actor. I played Elliott in E.T. Most famously.
Hi, Henry. So, what was your favorite scene as Elliott in the film?
Well, I enjoyed kind of the whole sequence of discovering E.T. and basically the whole first act of the film.
Yeah, I heard that Spielberg likes to do that film in sequential order so that it brings out the emotions really genuine, actually, which really it succeeded really well.
It was great, for kids, because you can kind of stay with the story more, because the biggest challenge in film acting is kind of knowing where your character is at a specific moment, because you're always shooting out of order. So we did shoot a little bit out of order, but for the most part it was pretty sequential.
Yeah. And if you had to change one scene in the film, what would it be and why? Specifically, either your scenes or any other character or any other scenes in the movie, your choice.
No, I mean, I think it's a pretty perfect film in terms of the structure. And I think that the characters are all, they're really vibrant characters, they're pretty complete. I think it would have been nice to maybe have seen Elliott and Michael and Gertie's dad, but that would have changed the whole focus of the film.
Yeah, because it was mentioned that he was in Mexico.
Right.
You said that he was in Mexico, and then Gertie was asking, "Where's Mexico?"
Yeah.
I guess she didn't realize how far away Mexico is specifically. But kind of a follow-up question to that specifically: if Spielberg were to cast a dad for the family, who would you like to have as the dad and why?
Well, at the time, I would have said Harrison Ford.
Oh, yeah.
Because he was my hero, and also he was dating or in a relationship with this screenwriter, Melissa Matheson. So he was on set a lot, and it would have been good. But he actually played the principal in the scene that was cut out of the theatrical film.
Yeah, were you like
I was very excited to do that. Yeah, that was like a gift that I had never expected.
Yeah, and then being part, mainly the main character in the standpoint of this film, this iconic film, did you get to take home any props or any souvenirs?
No.
As a standpoint?
Anything was, when you do a film, all the props, they're usually rented from a prop house and things like that. So occasionally you're gifted a piece of your wardrobe, or maybe a prop that was personal to this character or something. But no, as a 10-year-old, I didn't take any loot from the set.
Oh, man. Oh, okay. And then this question is asked a lot in the ET fan community. So the first half of the first and second acts of the film are kind of mellow and genuine. And then all of a sudden, it takes a big turn. Your character specifically and E.T. in the whole medical field, even myself coming from a medical background, I can see how disturbing and traumatizing the whole medical aspect or atmosphere can be, especially in horror specifically. So your performance, I give props to you, because you brought out all the emotions of pretty much a dying child, a dying friend, literally side by side each other. And it, even seeing it for the first time in theaters with all the speakers on loud volume, it kind of gave me, it kind of made me kind of quiver a little bit. But would you consider this film a horror film, or would you consider it more of a sci-fi adventure?
No, I think because it has such a heart to it, I think that its message is mostly one of compassion. So I would never say that it was a horror film. I think it's, it's an adventure movie. And it's a very human story.
All right. And then one final question. So everyone asked about the sequel. You were in the 2019 Xfinity commercial, which that kind of pretty much was as close as we would get for a sequel specifically. But would you be down if Spielberg would say, okay, let's kind of do another?
I've always been available for that. I've always been willing to do that. I think all of us would, but it is ultimately a question of whether or not Steven Spielberg, Kathy Kennedy, Amblin, the Universal Studios apparatus, all of that, if they okay it, because otherwise, it's Steven's property and it's Steven's realm, and it's a very special film for him. So I think he wants to leave it alone, and I think it's a good thing.
And then one final thing. So I know you follow HJT Archives on Instagram, and she put out an announcement to all of us fans that your birthday to do a whole birthday shout out. I was actually one of those.
Yes.
My background, that's actually my home, kind of like up by the cliffside. Unfortunately, now they're experiencing extreme landslides where literally a community by my house, literally the home slid down. Like it goes from like level to almost like drops, and then some people's homes are like, there's a road that is almost like an Indiana Jones ride essentially.
Yikes.
But glad you enjoyed that birthday video. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for this interview.
Thank you.
I'm Robert MacNaughton and low character. No, I was Michael in the movie E.T. the Extraterrestrial.
All right, Michael. Or Robert, as I should say. So, what would be your favorite scene in the film specifically?
My favorite scenes tend to be ones I'm not in. So the one that gets me every time, that is like the one that makes me cry, but also I think it's so beautifully filmed. It's like a Kubrick shot. Is the one where you see Henry and he's talking to E.T. when he's in the coffin through the round window. I just think it's a beautiful, beautiful shot, a beautiful scene, heartfelt. I just love that. So I'd say if you ask me for the favorite scene I'm in is a scene where I'm with Henry and we're in the garage and we're going through our dad's things.
Speaking of which, was that all improvised? So you guys were just like almost kind of like chit-chatting with each other, or was that actual script?
That's the skill of the writer, Melissa Matheson. She had a way of writing dialogue that really sounded like real teenagers would talk to each other, but it was, if you see her other movies, The Black Stallion, she has a way of writing where you say a lot with very little. And so that's how she wrote that scene. None of it was improvised. She would be open to suggestions about like minor things, or like the scene where I do the Yoda voice. It wasn't in the script, but it was a suggestion from Henry that I do it the way Yoda would say, "You have absolute power." So she was open to suggestions, but we did not improvise in that sense. Sometimes Steven would suggest, talk us through a scene and then say, well, now try saying this, now try saying that. But nothing was actually completely improvised.
All right. And then if you had to change one scene, what would it be and why? If any, either your scenes or any other scenes in the movie?
Well, you ask any actor, I'm very self-critical, and I couldn't even watch it. I would cringe at the sound of my voice, and how I did certain things I would change, but I got over that. So now I think it's pretty good as it is. I still wish there's things I wish that come across as false that I wish I would have, done a little bit differently. But overall, I think, I ended up, there's nothing I can do about it, so.
Perfect. And then being a part of this iconic film, did you get to take home any souvenirs, any clothing, props, little souvenirs?
If I would have known that eBay was going to come up, apparently somebody from the ILM had all kinds of souvenirs. My buddy, Ryan, he has the mushroom from the spaceship that he bought on eBay that was sold by one of the guys from ILM. I would have been grabbing stuff left and right. And then they took us on a tour of ILM, and so we saw the third Star Wars movie, the special effects being done. We saw that giant, big, pointy spaceship. I would have been grabbing stuff left and right. I mean, I'm not a kleptomaniac, but if I would have known like how crazy all this merchandise stuff would have gone. The only thing I kept was my costumes. One of them was actually my T-shirt, the Space Invader shirt that I wear in one scene. I kept that because it was my own. But then I also kept the No Nuke shirt, and I kept the sweatshirt that I wear when I first see E.T.
Nice.
And I still have all those.
Nice. And then this question is asked a lot in the ET fan community. So during the first like good chunk of the movie, it's like a pretty mellow film, and then all of a sudden, their ET dies or becomes very gravely
You're giving it away.
ill, and then
Spoiler alert.
and then you
Not safe for work.
and then, and then there's just all the dramatic and then the like disturbing aspects of that second latter part of the film. I don't want to say exactly what happens.
You can say it. Everybody's seen
basically, it's
I'm kidding.
a lot of disturbances, and like it gets really intense, like 0 to 100 really quick in that part of the film. So with that being
Shit
said,
gets real, as
yes,
certain
shit
people
gets
would say.
weird. Shit gets real.
It's real.
Yeah. So
That's Spielberg's
real
skill
life,
as a
real
director.
life. Yeah.
That's his skill. And when he turns it back the other way and makes it exciting again, like with the bike chase, you don't notice all of the sort of minor flaws, like the fact that Elliott's a foot taller, the guy on the bike is a foot taller.
Yeah, it's a
than
stunt.
Elliott.
None
of that, because he has the audience in the palm of his hand. That's totally the skill of the filmmaker.
Yeah, and then going off of that, like kind of flip flop back and forth, would you consider E.T. a horror or a sci-fi adventure more so?
That's a good question. That's a very good question. I haven't gotten that before.
Because that medical scene, coming from like a horror like fanatic like myself, liking all horror films, that scene and that medical scene in specific gave me the chills and kind of made me clench in the theater as I was playing on loudspeaker. It was loud and on an echo, so it kind of felt uneasy to the point where I kind of squirmed in my chair.
If since whoever's watching this right now is probably online, Google why E.T. is the most horrifying movie ever made, and you'll see all the cases made for why it's got a lot of elements of horror. Steven directed it coming straight off of Poltergeist, which he wrote, and most likely directed most of it. Anyway, so he also did a horror film called Something Evil for television back in the 70s. That's very good. It's about like a haunted house. But he's never done except for Poltergeist, he's never done a straightforward horror film. But he was a big fan of horror films. Because I talked to him because my grandparents lived in Phoenix. And he used to go to the theater in downtown Phoenix when he lived in Phoenix in the 50s. And he would see like Creature from the Black Lagoon. And he would bring like a bag full of fake vomit. And he would be in the balcony and he'd pretend to be vomiting on the people below during whatever horror film it was. And so he's a big, that's just part of the inspirations that made up who Steven is. I mean, he was inspired by Hitchcock, by John Ford, by all those great directors, but horror was a big part of it, his childhood.
Yeah. And then one final question. If Spielberg allows for a sequel, would you be down to do a sequel, like a full-on sequel?
I would, as long as it was a sequel to Close Encounters. No, kidding. I don't think he'll ever want to do a sequel to E.T. I just think it's his baby and it's too close and personal for him. I would jump at the chance to do it, to be with the cast members again, and but I don't think. At the same time, I think it's good that he doesn't do a sequel.
Cool.
So it's not something that lends itself to a sequel very easily, because it's not like Indiana Jones or Star Wars where it's continuing adventures of your heroes doing something else. It's kind of like a fable that has a beginning, a middle, and an end, and it's kind of a beautiful the way it is. you know. He said in interviews that he regrets the end of Close Encounters where Richard Dreyfuss goes on the spaceship. That now that Steven has a family with kids and everything, he always thought that was a bit harsh that he left his family behind. But E.T. is different. E.T.'s like, it's meant to be the way, it's meant to end the way it is. I'll tell you the original ending from E.T., which I like to think is still sort of what happens. In the original end of E.T., after the spaceship takes off, they show us playing Dungeons and Dragons again in the house. And we're all playing a game of Dungeons and Dragons, except this time Elliott is the dungeon master, and he's in charge. And then the camera fades, the camera goes up out the window, and on the top of the house you see the communicator, and it's going communicating with E.T. on his home planet. And I think that's a beautiful ending. So Elliott still is in contact with E.T., but yet it doesn't have to be the further adventures of.
Nice.
So that's a long answer to a short question, but that's my answers. I think it doesn't need a sequel.
Right.
Hi, I'm Matthew Demeritt, and I played some scenes in E.T.
All right, Matthew. So I would say, what was your favorite scene in the movie?
My favorite scene in the movie would probably be the scene that I'm most known for. So when E.T. gets hammered in the kitchen on Coors beer, that was probably my favorite scene. And then some scenes that I'm not in, like when the bike takes off with E.T. and Elliott take off on the bike. There was no one in that. There was just that's a little puppet in the basket. But because of movie magic, we all bought into it, and we all got a lump in our throat during that scene. I like that scene.
Ah, nice. And what would you say? What if you had to change one part of the film, either with your part or another character or just any scene in general? What would it be, and why would you change?
I think in all the scenes where Pat, here, let's get a picture here. This is Pat. He played in the Halloween scene and the cross-dressing scene. And then this is Tamara, and she played in the scene where E.T. walked up the ramp. And so on all the scenes where E.T. is walking, they have a dummy head on top of our head, basically. And it doesn't have any articulation in the face or anything. I would have gone back and done like massive robotics in this head right here to make it more articulate, because it's just a static, you know, there's no movement or articulation in the head. That's what I would have changed. Spielberg, it bugged Spielberg too, because he went back for the 20th anniversary and retweaked it, added some CGI and stuff because he wanted to give more expression to it. Then he realized the CGI didn't blend with the practical effects, so he was embarrassed by that. He disavowed it. He said, "I wish I had done that."
Yeah, were you part of that CGI scene with Elliott and E.T. in that bathroom and Elliott opening or spraying the Coke can all over and then E.T. falling into the bathtub? Were you kind of part of that scene and then they kind of did CGI that way?
I wasn't part of that. They didn't like, I think that Pat was doing that scene and Spielberg didn't like the way it turned out authentic, and that's why he redid it with CGI. Mm-hmm. And it just wasn't meant to be.
All right. And this is a question I ask everyone, but being a part of such an iconic film, did you get to take home any like little souvenirs, like any like props that really kept a solid memory to the film itself?
I wish. I was terrible. We moved a lot when I was a kid, so I lost a lot of that. Like I had E.T. The film was called E.T. and Me. After it was called Boys Life, it was called E.T. and Me. I had a hat called E.T. that said E.T. and Me on it. I wish I would have hung on to that one. I lost it. That's one. It wasn't really a prop though. They were pretty guarded with the props. Although I heard that Robert kept the Space Invaders shirt.
Yeah,
so,
I think during the Drew Barrymore show, he showed the shirt on camera, his exact shirt from the movie.
Okay, I heard. Yeah, he told me he kept a couple of shirts from it. So somehow he was able to do it, but I didn't try.
If they let you keep one of the props, what would
the robe?
The little this
classic,
plaid.
the kitchen robe.
Ah,
Absolutely,
nice.
You know what I gotta do? I gotta buy a robe like that and wear it to a convention.
Yes.
So,
Oh yeah.
but I gotta find. I don't know how to find it. I guess plaid kitchen robe or a bath robe.
Like a blue white
There's
plaid.
gotta be something.
Yeah. And then just like a curiosity question, would you consider E.T. a horror film or a sci-fi film? Because there are some scenes that towards the end, especially the medical scene, coming like even from myself as a medical standpoint,
Yeah.
hearing and seeing that for the first time in theaters was almost kind of like what I would feel in a horror movie, where I would be like, ugh, like I would kind of clench up and kind of like just stare and have like a blank look or expression, just like but in my mind it'll be like I kind of like freaked out, and it's like it's scary almost to the point where it's like, oh god. So would you consider an E.T. somewhat a horror film in a way, or would you consider it more like a sci-fi adventure?
I've met too many people. I've met more than half, less than half, but almost half. The people come to me say the film's still traumatized them. Like they can't make it all the way through after like seeing the cornfield. Some can barely even make it to the scene at the end, where he's dying.
Yeah.
So I would say that it's both. It's a horror film and it's that's what makes it so unique, because Spielberg does horror well. He also does family
both the guys, yeah.
He brings it together like seamlessly, which I think is amazing. So yeah, it's a toss-up.
Oh. And then one final question. So I know everyone says this, but are you down for a sequel, if ever? If Spielberg would just say, okay, Cass, do you want to come back, yes or no?
Sure, I think we're all down for a sequel. I don't think it will happen.
Yeah.
But certainly would be down for it. But 90% chance that it would look like a cash grab, and it would capture a fraction of the magic of the first. That's one of the reasons they're not doing it. But if we did do it, I don't think that it would be very unusual if they could top the original.
Yeah. And then I remember in 2019, I think Henry was in that Xfinity commercial.
Yeah.
To kind of give a little bit taste of a reunion, but not as quite. It was more like an advertisement for Xfinity specifically, but to kind of bring back the nostalgic feel of E.T. bringing the flowers to life, and then the E.T. coming hiding for the first time, or going into the shed with the bicycles, and eventually recreating the bicycle fly over the moon, and then the spaceship leaving as well.
They did all that in that commercial.
Yeah.
They put all those Easter eggs in there.
Yeah, little Easter eggs. So even the little green scarf, the train, the stuffed animals, and then it's
that's cool.
interesting.
And Spielberg approved that. Which is unusual.
Yeah.
So he must be longing to revisit that world, right? And that's why he approved it.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that it's 7 minutes long, was just gift enough to people who wanted to see it. And a lot of people refer to it as the sequel, even though it's not an official sequel.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Matthew. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Dee Wallace, and I played Mary in E.T.
All right, Dee, so what was your favorite scene in the movie?
When I read Peter Pan to Gertie.
And if you had the option to change one scene at all, either your scene or any other scene in the movie, what will it be and why?
Probably the scene where E.T. comes and leaves the Reese's Pieces on Mary's nightstand. I would have pulled the sheet up much higher.
Oh. And then, being part of this iconic film, did you get to take any souvenirs or any props or wardrobe specifically?
No, I had my Halloween dress.
The cat dress.
Yep.
Yeah, nice. Do you still wear that for Halloween, just to celebrate?
No, I sold it a couple of years ago.
Oh, on eBay or where?
No, at a convention.
Oh, nice. Yeah. And then, so basically, E.T. is a really telling tale of a kid, basically a boy finding a friend, essentially, like a forever friend. And then at some point in the film, things take a dramatic turn for the worse, that obviously E.T. dies or is starting to die. And then there's that whole medical scene set up with that at the house that it's pretty hard to watch, even for myself, even being a horror fan myself. But would you consider E.T. going from switching back from a mellow to a kind of a scary, disturbing, uneasy horror film, or more like an adventure? All right.
No, I don't look at it that way at all. I look at it as a human story of love and resilience.
Nice. And then if Spielberg would like everyone to come back for a sequel, would you be down to come back and reprise your role as Meritt? Thank you so much.
There's always been talk of sequels and things like that. And it's really funny because it's Steven Spielberg's baby, and he's very particular about this film. So I've always viewed any attempt at revamping the character or showing it, in a different context, as sort of a thing that's never gonna happen. Then they said, well, Steven signed off on the story, he loves it. And I said, what? Looking at the storyboards and everything, I could see exactly why Steven was really behind it, because the integrity of the story isn't lost in this retelling or reshaping of it.
A little bit more smoke. Actually, it's good right now. Ready and action. More than anything, the whole story is just about family. Young Elliott is a grown man, and he now has a wife and kids, and so the way that sort of bookends, or the balance that has to the original story, I think is really beautiful in that way.
This commercial is really all about connection and togetherness and building unbreakable bonds with people.
I think this makes a really nice holiday film, because the holidays are about friends and family and distant relatives coming together. Sometimes after long periods of being apart, sometimes in spite of great distances.
I remember this guy. He's getting a little older there.
I was talking to henrythomas, and I said, it's amazing the way you can relate to this guy. And he said, I just think of him as real.
Such an iconic character. Steven never wanted to do a sequel. This is a character that is beloved by everybody for generations, so you can't screw it up. We had a team of mechanics, painters, mold makers that all have to recreate this character.
This radio is controlling his eyes and eyebrows.
It's amazing how much technology has changed filmmaking and this industry.
You can make him talk. E.T. home. 1, 2, 3, scream.
I was saying to the puppeteers, I wish we would have had this guy back then, because it would have made things so much easier. But at the time, in the early 80s, it was all cutting edge, and we were breaking new ground, and it was a totally new frontier.
With a rod puppet, you get a really fluid, connected performance. Little subtleties of head movement, arm movement that you can't get with internal robotics. And that's an easier thing for CG to do, is to remove the rods, remove the puppeteers, than to do a full CG character.
We took everything great about the puppet, and then we used CG to just take it to the next level and bring it to life. Dilating pupils, adding breath, refinessing textures. The full CG way would actually be bringing it into the 21st century. We actually wanted to go more back to what Steven Spielberg was doing in the original movie.
You'll go like this, and he's gonna copy you. Yeah, exactly. Ready and action. Doing this in CG would present huge challenges in terms of working with our child actors. That tactile presence of the puppet for our kids was great. I don't think we would have ever gotten the same performances out of them if that was a full CG character. There's certain limitations that a puppet gives you, and we're designing shots in the same way they did in the original movie because they were working with those same considerations. Really leaning more into backlighting on E.T. You know, they backlit E.T. whenever possible, very little bit of fill light. And in doing so, it made him feel much more lifelike.
In the making of this film, we wanted to nod to the original, but not totally remake it. There were certain iconic scenes and images and even props that we definitely wanted to pay homage to. We have put dozens and dozens of Easter eggs throughout this film. A photo of the original dog, Harvey, Gertie's cup, the drawing that Elliott drew of E.T. in school, the bike, the original bike. All of these things are peppered throughout the film so that every time you watch it, you're likely to see something new that you've never seen before.
When Gertie's watching TV and she's learning the alphabet, it was B for basket on the TV. So we got that in there. Just little things like that we've kind of thrown in.
The bobby pins actually make a connection on the saw blade as it spins around with exposed parts that weren't painted, and that actually sends a signal on the original one, which sends the message that E.T. sends out to his home planet. It's hard when you have to try to match it as best as possible, but it's also pretty cool to create something that, you know, gives you nostalgia from your childhood.
There's a lot of nostalgia in it, you know? There's a lot of nostalgia for us as viewers, as well as for Elliott, of course.
I hope that when people watch this film, it would kind of spark that reminiscing almost, where you just go back to that time when you loved this film and kind of just relive that childhood moment.
I'll be right here.
It's so neat how we're able to bring this story to life and still honor and respect the way that it was originally told.
I think in all of Spielberg's films, he's not afraid to really go to a place that's sentimental, that's emotional. So I think really the homage would be, can we create an emotional story in this abbreviated telling?
It has such a special place in people's hearts, this film and this story. I think audiences are going to love it.